This is the Nearly Enlightened podcast. I am your host, Gianna Geruso, and today I am joined by the lovely Marissa Lynn. She is a spiritual mentor who focuses on sacred union partnership, somatic embodiment, sacred sexuality, psychedelic preparation and integration, ancestral healing, and feminine mysteries. She offers ritual bathing, cacao ceremonies, and intuitive energy healing, in addition to one-on-one mentorships. She offers a free Women's Red Tent Facebook group for women virtually to connect and learn conscious menstruation in sisterhood. You can also find her, I'll link it in the show notes on her website and book a free call for a consultation. I'm so excited to have you. Welcome, Marissa.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here. I just
Uh,
love you and I love your work and you have such deep integrity and it's an honor to be in your space.
I love you. Oh my gosh. So Marissa and I met through cacao, through One World Cacao and Nola, who was on here like many years ago. Um, but yeah, ever since then we've had like this kind of virtual friendship, and I've just loved, like, I feel like over the last like year and a half you've really like blossomed and just like really stepped into your power, and I love and I'm obsessed with everything you do, and there's so much I want to talk about, but let's start with like the feminine mysteries and your red tent, because I think a lot of women will resonate with that work here.
Yeah, so I'll start with where it began because I can tell you
Yeah.
about the things we do, but to really describe the frequency and the transformation, that's what we want to hear, right? We want to feel into what does this work do for me? What can I experience? How will I change through it? How will I get to grow and who will I become in that process? So my journey with feminine mysteries began when I was 23, 24. I was living in Boston and I went to a psychedelic storytelling event. I was on my period and like little background. I had had an IUD before that, which perpetuated the trauma in my body. And I'd always had like pretty bad periods in general. And like it had just been normalized to take ibuprofen constantly or Tylenol constantly during my periods.
Or
I
here's
didn't
a
have,
birth control prescription. Like that's I experienced that too. Like I've always had heavy, like crazy periods, and it was like, here, take a birth control prescription, and was on it for like 10 years before I kind of like was like, oh, I gotta get off of this.
yeah. And so many women had this intuitive knowing of, I desire to get off of this. And so often, and not to say all do it, but there's so many gynecologists and people in Western medicine who gaslight you and who shame you and who really guilt you and fear you into consuming birth control. And I'm not here to say that birth control is wrong. I think it's each woman's embodied choice and your lifestyle. Like I also am in a situation where I'm in a monogamous marriage. So, you know, there's a lot of difference of what could happen if I ended up pregnant. That being said, I have been off of birth control for many years following cyclical alchemy and have never had a pregnancy scare. So, yeah, I mean, my journey with it was that I was having these excruciating periods, and I went to the psychedelic storytelling probably on 13 ibuprofen because that's how many I would take on day 1 and day 2 of my bleeds.
Oh
Like
my gosh, that is so much.
so much. Like so much. And it just like every year I feel like I was just increasing how much I would need per bleed. And I didn't even have like a big concept of how damaging that could be to my body. And I heard this woman speak, and she wasn't even speaking about menstruation at all. She was sharing about her journey with ayahuasca and healing through trauma. And I had this like full body sensation of, I don't know who this woman is. I don't know what she offers, but I have to work with her. And so afterwards, I go up to her and I'm like, I don't know what you do, but I would love to work with you. What do you offer? Who are you? And so we talked for a little bit, ended up booking a consultation call with her, and found out that she does feminine mysteries and conscious menstruation. And she actually birthed her business through conscious menstruation coaching. And I was like, well, this is perfect because I came here in a ton of period pain, on a ton of ibuprofen. I have horrendous periods. I've been off of an IUD for years now. And I still just have entirely debilitating, sometimes calling off work periods.
Yes. And
Um,
so many women experience this and it's been normalized, but it's not normal. Like it's time that we talk about that. It's not normal to have these intense symptoms during your period. Like your body is telling you something.
Absolutely. It's entirely not normal. And she was the first person in my life who ever even said that to me. And so I ended up embarking on a maybe it was, I don't remember if it was 3 or 6 months at this point. It was 6 or 7 years ago. But, anyways, I ended up embarking on a multi-month journey with her learning conscious menstruation. And it really was the foundation for changing my life. And I went from taking tons of ibuprofen and smoking weed to oblivion the entire time of my period to no ibuprofen, no substances by the end of the container. And what I often talk with my clients about who I've done one-on-one work with this and is it's a non-linear journey, right? Like I learned so many skills in this and I learned the foundations for listening to my body. And I also didn't listen to my body all the time. And I also went through phases after that where I, drank too much alcohol 1 month or did a different thing and like ended up starting to notice how these different behaviors and experiences impacted the cycle. Um, so that was just the seeds, right? That was the foundation of giving me understanding on how each part of our cycle, whether we start in our menstruation, we have these different archetypes that we can connect to. And we also have diet. Like I tell everyone, it's like there's twofold to this. Or really three. You have the ancestral healing aspect of the womb and what isn't even yours to be carrying that can be causing physical pain. We have the physical experience, which is like, oh, maybe you're just spiking your blood sugar through the roof every morning. And so, you're not having high protein, high fat breakfasts and you're just spiking that blood sugar. So naturally your adrenal system is stressed and then your hormones aren't processing in the right way. There's a hormonal imbalance. There's our own physical trauma that can be stored in the womb space and the energetic component and the spiritual component. And so we're really working with all of it. And learning all of it and being able to tap into our own bodies and teaching women how to listen to themselves, even over my voice, even over doctors, even over anybody else, because they know their body best. And that's like so much of why I'm impassioned about this work.
I love this. I love to have people on who are like fully embodied in their work and not just like talking the talk, but they're walking the walk as well. And I really feel like you're one of those people. And your journey speaks to that of like, you, like so many people that have been on this podcast and myself included, like you start the journey within and you learn all of these tools and you gather the tools that work. And then it's like, you have this moment where it's like, oh, I have to teach other people this. So if you are, or if somebody's listening and they might have experiences like this where they're really disconnected to their menstrual cycle and they have painful periods, they have lots of symptoms, like where would you tell them to start?
A few things. I would start with the physical body because it's the one screaming for attention. So I would start with before the period yoni steaming.
Oh,
Just
yes,
to
let's talk about that. So if somebody
yes.
is like totally even unfamiliar with that, what is it?
So it is basically you can do it at your house. You can also pay for someone to do it. You can order the herbs. You're going to order herbs specific for yoni steaming. And then you're going to take a bowl of water and pour hot water over the herbs, kind of like making a giant tea for your pussy.
I love that.
And you squat over, or you can arrange pillows and sit over this pot of hot water and herbs with a blanket over you so that it creates a steam that goes up into the vaginal canal, all the ways up into the uterus. And so there's so many benefits to this. The herbs contain detoxifying properties, toning properties for the pelvic floor. The steam itself actually brings a lot of moisture up into the uterus. And so you're getting the medicine that you need directly to the area that it's needed. So it's absolutely something that I would recommend starting with ahead of time. The other thing is on the period, like if you can, day 1, day 2, if you're especially having a lot of pain, like do nothing. Don't be afraid to call off work. Don't be afraid to clear your calendar. Like it really is so important to intentionally go into that womb cave, put on meditative music and allow yourself to listen to the body. I say like when you're feeling pain, like ask the body, like, instead of numbing it or ignoring it or trying to detach from it, like really sitting with it, being like, all right, if you're screaming at me, how loud can we scream? And I invite you to like put your hands on your womb and scream with it, like scream that sound out, like truly drop in, like, ah, like let it out somatically because it's going to start moving energy. Um, Foria Wellness is a company that I am not a brand ambassador for. I just highly recommend
That's
their
so funny. I just placed an order.
yeah, I highly recommend their CBD suppository melts. So they have these CBD melts that are organic oil and CBD. I think it's just 2 ingredients.
Yeah, I think it's
You
like MTC coconut oil.
Yeah, it's super simple. You put it right up into your vagina, into the vaginal canal, and then you rest so that it moves back through the cervix. And it really does bring so much. Like I actually think it works better than ibuprofen or Tylenol, in my opinion, because you're getting the medicine exactly where it's needed. Hot baths, drinking hot water, and like basic hormone health, I would say going to bed early and eating a high protein breakfast. Those are 2 really easy lifestyle changes that aren't super complicated with herbs and cycles and seed cycling and all of the things that are just let me try these few things and see where I go.
Yeah, I love that. I am so excited you brought up Foria, because I just placed my second order with them and I just like love their company. I think what they're doing is so amazing and the education that they put out is so amazing. So if you like, I'm not sponsored by them either, but go check out that company, especially if you have painful periods, if you need support during intimacy. I think it's just like such a great company. There's so many different products. I mean, I even saw that they have a new like breast massage oil, which I love. And my friend Kat, who has been on this podcast in the past, has talked about breast massage and how important it is and how it can actually help with hormone imbalance. Like
Yeah,
something's
that's
so simple.
something so simple. That's one of the practices that I invite women to do during yoni steam is breast and womb massage. So as we're sitting over a steam, we are engaging in breast and womb massage. It's so powerful for the hormones. It's also so powerful for opening our heart. Like breast massage is one of the most potent practices for allowing me to connect and to feel the polarity of grief and pleasure, which is something I do a lot in sacred sexuality work and helping people to really feel the fullness of that experience.
Yeah. So how do those two emotions correlate? Because I don't know if you've listened to this this season, but we talk a lot about grief because my whole like last year was like an unbecoming, and now this year we're like moving through that. So I've talked a lot about grief, and grief and pleasure seem like these two opposite ends of the spectrum. So how do they kind of go together?
So, one of the things that I work with a lot in embodiment is feeling the feeling all the ways through until it becomes a new feeling. And so, my biggest initiation on my spiritual journey was my brother went through a huge accident 4 years ago, almost to the day, 4 years ago yesterday.
Wow, that's
So
crazy.
the timing of this is very synchronistic. And so my brother was welding, he was in an accident, and now he is quadriplegic, to make long story short. Um, and so he had already been a huge part of the ancestral healing that I had done in my entire family. We had experienced different traumas together, gone through various roles of victim, perpetrator, and then breaking through that. He was very integral into a lot of the messages I received in plant medicine ceremonies leading way before his accident. And you know, one of the things that like feeling the grief of someone who's still living but is an entirely different person, is often called ambiguous grief. And I know one day he will die. He will die before me. It's miraculous that he's even lived this long. And one of the things I talk about with my journey with him in particular is that you never know how much you love someone's ego until they truly don't have any concept of ego anymore. And since he is now mentally disabled and quadriplegic, all of that ego is gone. And I very much do miss his sarcastic and arrogance and all of the things. But, yesterday was such a potent day for me because I woke up and I had actually completely forgotten it was the anniversary of his accident, whereas every other year it entirely derailed me. And it really speaks to the power of feeling the feeling all the ways through and bringing in loving feelings with that. And so huge practice that I've had is mindful erotic practice. And it's a practice that I learned through sacred sexuality and somatic sex education. And sometimes it's called orgasmic yoga as well. And it's essentially, I put on a long playlist and I move my body however my body needs to move with the intention of what does my body need right now? What would make me feel pleasurable right now? How can I follow this thread of pleasure all the ways through? And one of the things that's come up both through breast massage and during that practice is, oh, I'm trying to follow pleasure, but I am riddled with grief. I am just destroyed to my core and grieving. And how can it feel good to scream and to slap and to cry and to release and to give my body loving touch and massage and even masturbation and the throes of devastation, and feeling the fullness and how far I can expand by holding both polarities, and they can even become medicine for the other, has been life-changing. And I really think that so much of allowing myself to feel through all the feelings is what allowed this sort of breakthrough moment of, wow, it's been 4 years and I woke up and I'm in a good mood and I'm enjoying my bike ride and I'm sending him love and I'm sending him Reiki on this day. And also, what a testament to the journey that I've been on. That I can wake up and it's not to shake me to my core anymore. And also, having been shaken to my core, having been brought to my knees so many times, and allowing myself to feel that feeling no matter what the occasion was, instead of distracting and disassociating and numbing out, but keeping to the intention of, I desire to feel pleasure in my life. I desire to have joy in my life. And I'm going to cultivate that without ignoring or shaming or gaslighting the other feelings or trying to push them to the side, but bringing them together into wholeness.
Right. Because a lot of times those uncomfortable feelings, we try, like you said, we try to numb them out, especially in this society, like with alcohol and weed. That's like big things in our society right now. Or just pushing those feelings down and not allowing ourselves to fully feel them. Like that's where disease and mental illness and other things kind of come up out of that when we're not fully feeling all of these feelings. Like it's great to feel pleasure and joy and happiness and have laughter and celebration. But when those other feelings come up that are like the opposite of that, it's really hard to allow yourself to lean in and to feel those without getting swept away into like a sea of depression. So I really have to celebrate you for that, for like leaning on your tools and for feeling your way through and not allowing yourself to get like washed away, because it could be so easy, and so many people, that's their experience. And I want this platform to have lots of concrete tools for people to try to use. And I think what you're speaking to is like absolutely spot on. So when you are having those days where you wake up and you kind of are swept away in grief and sadness and all of the other things that get brought up, when someone you love is hurting, like what are the tools that you lean on the most?
Music is so important to me. So I play music that is his favorite. I have a whole playlist of like songs that make me think of him. songs that we shared together, which includes plenty of 90s country, which is random as fuck. Um, and usually I hit my mat, right? So I set out I basically create a ritual for connecting with the energy. And that's going to be breath, sound, movement, touch. So anything that follows the breath, sound, movement, touch, and moving through the energy. And so often what we find with these big emotions is the person that we're grieving for, whether it's their death or whether it's ambiguous grief, like I'm moving through now or have been moving through, they're just a catalyst for the deeper emotion that can be leaned into. And so what we end up having is an unraveling and a deepening the further we feel into it, and to grief for other people, grief for the future, grief for past life versions, if you believe in those, or parallel life versions, if that's something that resonates with the person who's listening to this. And how, maybe in those other lives, other dimensions, we weren't able to feel the feelings all the ways through. We were thrust into survival mode and we weren't able to heal and move past it. And so sometimes it'll be, 2 hours on my yoga mat, screaming, hitting, flailing, shaking, breathing, sounding, until the grief eventually evolves into sadness or into anger or into frustration or into like absolute laughter because I realize how fucking ridiculous I am in my bedroom flailing around. And that can happen. And that's such a beautiful moment of celebration or even just deep relief. One of the things that came up for me in one of my most potent sessions, I woke up just entirely swept away in grief for my brother. And I had written some poetry, and I find poetry to be such a powerful way of connecting to the depth of our emotions. And the beautiful thing about poetry is it's how we were feeling in a moment, not necessarily the fullness of how we feel all the time. And there's a beautiful amount of permanence we can give to an emotion through that art. And I had taken a bath because I knew that there was something in me that wanted to be unlocked. And so I had taken a bath and started breast massage and EFT tapping, if you've done that, like all the tapping it out, because I could just feel this energy festering on my heart space. And I put on music that made me think of Dustin, whether it was his favorites or even just songs that have come to me since his grief or since this accident that are like, all right, I know that this will cut me to my core every time. Thank you, Phoebe Bridgers and Taylor Swift.
We're big fans of Taylor Swift here. We did a whole episode on TTPD.
I saw it. My sister and I have it bookmarked to listen together when we go to but we like won't listen to it until we're together.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
It's like a pen in our plans. We're like, we have to listen to this together. So one person with her again, it's like a date.
Oh, I love that. That's so special.
Yeah, I'm so excited. So, whether it's, regardless of the song or portion of a song, grief is so mystical in that these small little things can just unlock floodgates. And I move through this practice and I just start like cathartically crying and sounding and feeling through. And I could really feel my brother's spirit there with me. And I ended up moving into my bedroom, into my yoga mat after, and just like staying with the feeling, staying with the embodied sensation. And there was this moment, and I'm kind of moving in between crying and like lighting sage and incense and cleansing myself and all of the things just flowing through the process, that I suddenly felt into my parents' grief for losing their child. And I was just like overcome with that level of grief, because I think no parent ever wants to lose their child. It is probably the worst pain on earth, in my opinion, would be to have a child and to lose them, or for something this level of tragic to happen. And that ended up fueling into this other life where I had lost a child, and how that version of me hadn't moved on. And it was through this deep level of work that I was able to connect to this other version of myself and allow her to move through that process, and to allow joy back in, and to allow love back in, because, the cliche saying is grief exists because love persists. And I think it's so incredibly true. It's not really a cliche. It's one of the most potent statements. We've just heard it a million times.
Yep.
Um, but it doesn't make it any less profound. And I think it's something that we get to experience. And it was through that. And I ended up moving all the ways through all of these emotions. And then all of the joyful moments of my brother and I, and even of that different life, there's just like flooding in of the magic that I've gotten to have with him. And even after his accident, the level of deep intimacy and that I would never have gotten to have with him had he not gone through this. And even intimacy of our souls, because he is in this very expanded state and has such a severe brain injury. I do feel him visit me on medicine journeys. I do feel his higher self come in. And so the relationship has shifted and evolved and changed. Same with with one of my friends who had committed suicide years ago. I still feel her at different times come into my field. And there's this level that we get to open up to, both energetically, but also spiritually and mystically. And I move through that process and I start letting go of the stories of my brother and of all the lives. And I just start coming fully into the feeling of this joy and this gratitude and this pleasure. And I ended up moving through a whole embodied practice of self-massage and self-pleasure, just completely in a, wow, this energy lifted and now I get to feel good, because that is what anyone would want for me. Anyone who loves me would desire that I get to receive and feel good in my body.
Yes. And moving through those feelings and getting to the other side, there's like this, it's just like that weight lifts off. And
Mhm.
I love that you're talking about this, because something that I'm really passionate about is like, I am not part of like this positive vibes only camp. Like we're humans. We're here to feel and embody the full scope of emotions. And sometimes being a human is messy and ugly. And yeah, there's grief and there's loss and there are these uncomfortable feelings that no one wants to feel, but it's part of this human experience to fully feel these things. And like none of us are going to ever escape feeling them. Like we're all going to experience grief at some point in our journey here, and having the tools to move through those feelings, it's so important to me. It's probably why I got into the work myself. Like I don't know if you know this, but I also lost a brother. I was
I do
8.
dragonfly.
Yes, dragonfly. Yes.
Every
uh
time I see him, I think of your brother.
oh my gosh, I love that. Yes, he passed away when I was 8. He was 24, and same thing. Like now I've gotten to the point where I actually just said it this past week. I was talking about him and I was talking about my dad and saying like I don't know how he went on after that. Like I don't know how any kind of parent picks up and moves on after losing a child. That really truly must be like the worst grief and pain you'll ever feel in your life. But even a brother or a grandparent, whatever it is, those feelings of grief and loss are hard to deal with. And it's part of the reason why I got into this work, because I was always seeking like to be better and do better and feel better and to move through these uncomfortable feelings with more grace and less anger. So I really like appreciate this work. I love that you're talking about feeling the full scope of emotions and not just like shoving it down. So I think that's more dangerous than feeling the uncomfortable feelings.
1,000%. And like the opposite side of it is some of us get like obsessed with shadow work and obsessed with feeling
Yes.
the down feelings. And so there's this balance of, we can feel everything. For me is polarity. So we can feel joy to the extent that we feel grief, and we can feel pleasure to the extent that we felt some sort of pain in our life. And so when we're working with that type of polarity, we get to reattune to a new level of normal. We get to kind of reach these higher levels of, okay, I have already felt this, and I'm going to go to the top of my joy. And I'm going to trust that no matter how joyful I feel, the bottom's not going to fall. And I think so many people, when they are shadow work queens, as I say, they can get to a point where they're just like, oh, but I'm worried that like if I feel this happy or if I allow this level of happiness into my life, that the bottom's going to drop. And a lot of people experience this with partnership when they're really happy and falling in love. And so it's something that I work with couples on a lot is, and women specifically who are entering into partnerships. And it's a really great partnership. It's like the bottom doesn't have to fall. You can feel this level of happiness with this person. And it doesn't mean that the other feelings are never going to come. It just means that this level of joy, this level of excitement and pleasure and bliss is attainable and sustainable and possible. And it's always there for us to drop back into. And it can coexist at the same time as the grief or the sadness or the anger. And we don't have to push them aside.
Yes, like we can feel the full scope of human emotions. Like we don't have to just be like attached to one emotion and that's like what we're sticking with. I kind of think about this on like a very surface level today. I kind of had like a rough start this morning. Like I'm getting that full moon energy already. Like did not sleep a wink last night. My cats were up being like wild animals. They're feeling the full moon energy. I was like, oh, here we go. And then, like, before I know it, my alarm's going off. I'm going to teach 2 classes. The heat is broke in hot yoga. Like, everyone's expecting to like walk in and it be like 99 degrees. It's like not that at all. I'm like, oh God. Like, you're having one of those days where you're like, what else? What else? But after teaching and like stepping out of that space, like moving through, I'm like, it's only 10:30. Like, I cannot let this derail my day for the rest of the day. Like, I have to move through it. And that's what I did. I came home. I like washed my hands. I was like, we're clearing this energy. We're moving
Mhm.
through and we're like starting a brand new day.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that is that empowered choice and that taking ownership over our lives and our creation. And something that I talk about all the time is that we get to be the creators of our life. And so much of that is what am I choosing to allow in my day? How am I choosing to allow this day to affect me? And not to say that things don't derail and go wrong. I have nannied toddlers before, and I can tell you about that all day.
And that is like a spiritual journey, learning all in its own.
It truly is. I have learned many things in nervous system regulation through watching small children who can't regulate themselves. So everything is co-regulation, and it's like, all right, I have to master my nervous system so that this child will go to sleep. Um,
That's powerful work
yes, yes.
because it's
Oh,
easy to get swept away in the emotions of other people too, especially if you're in the healing space, if you're a healer or an empath, like it's easy to plug into other people's energy and just kind of like get carried away with it. But can you like stop and take a breath and just be like, this is not mine. I'm going to remain calm. And then it really does help to just like take it down on all levels.
it really does. And it so often is okay, I can let this, all right, the toddler is throwing a tantrum as we're trying to leave the house or something like that. And I just ended up stepping out of nannying and fully launching into my business, which was great. I was doing like part-time nanny work a couple of days a week for a family that I had been with for a couple of years and really loved. And we were so aligned in so many values. And my business started to grow, and I'm in huge celebration of the clients that I get to work with and that I'm truly living in that soul's purpose. And I also trust that that time in nannying was really preparing me to master my nervous system and to become my own master of my own life and my own body. Because there's so many times that it's like, I was in a great mood. I had a beautiful morning practice. I get here, you throw yogurt at me. Uh, Whatever the thing. And now there's a tantrum and we're getting out the door late and you also pooped and all of the like real life human messy things. And it's like, all right, we're just going to change our plans. We're not going to go try and do this thing. Like, why are we forcing this external thing to be doing? And instead, we need to find a little nature. We need to lay a blanket down and some toys, and we need to ground. We need to take some breaths, and taking that time to be like, I can't really be in service to these kids until I first master my own field. Um, and it's, that type of sovereignty, whether it's in relationship with children or in romantic partnership, is crucial to healthy relating and to really stepping into co-regulation and nervous system co-regulation, which is what I actually often talk about with mentorship as well. Is my mentor holds the keys to something, and the reason I work with her is because she is mastered in her business to a level that I desire to be. And so by working with her, I am attuning to that frequency. And we see this with little kids. If I'm super stressed and super annoyed and super frustrated, the little kids are going to react the same way. They're going to get annoyed, they're going to get frustrated, they're going to start crying and screaming or fighting over toys. But if I tone down and calm, then they're going to respond that way. We're just little tribal beings at the end of the day.
I know. You know what? This is so aligned to what we talked about with my friend Deirdre on our last episode. She talked a lot about when you're feeling like unregulated, you kind of need to ground, or you just need like a fresh perspective, like get out in nature. Like that is the best thing that you can do. Like there is physical science on grounding and earthing and being in those frequencies of nature. So I love that you brought that up again because it's just so synchronistic to what we were talking about on our last episode.
Oh, 1,000%. And like for the people that are listening that live in a city, like even just finding a park, like I live in Chicago, Chicago, like not in the burbs. And so even just like finding a park, finding a patch of grass, like I'm really lucky that I'm on the north side and we have like a little shared backyard with our building. So I can go out there for a few minutes, the lakefront, walking down by the lake. And even just, I think the company Earthing has like grounding mattress toppers.
Yes, I've seen those.
I 1,000% have one. Completely night and day shift on my dream states.
Wow,
Uh,
that's interesting.
yeah. And I'm a very like Vata person for those who are, so being a
Know a little
Vata,
bit about Ayurveda.
yeah, a little Ayurveda seed planting, but yeah, a little bit of like Vata or like lots of air energy. And I live in literally the windy city.
Oh, wow, that's so
So
funny.
that extra grounding is so needed so that I don't fly away. Uh,
I can relate to that. I'm a Gemini, so I've got a lot of air energy and I have a lot of fire energy in my chart too. So it's like the air and the fire. It's just like sometimes we just need to like calm the fuck down.
yes, 1,000%.
Yesterday, I was like, I am going to the beach. I'm putting my ass in the sand and like, do not talk to me for 3 hours.
Yeah, just need to chill. Just need to literally chill out.
Yeah, I also lived in the city for a while and but there's always a way to find nature. There really
Mm-hmm.
is always a way. I mean, even if you have a house plant, like just put your fingers in the dirt.
Put your fingers in the dirt. I mean, cities have patches of grass everywhere. New York has Central Park. And it's something that we can so easily make a ritual of. And as much as I have so many different feelings on cities and what I think of them and all that, but there's living nature there. That nature is alive. That nature is there to support you.
Yes, and
And so,
even if we're living in a city, like we are still part of nature. Like we we are not separate from nature. Like we are actually nature.
exactly. That's like one of the core things in the red tent, and is that we come from the mother. And the word mother and matter are directly linked. Like, so matter is our physical body, right? Like we have matter. That's what brings us into physical form. And the word matter comes from the Latin word mother. And so or maybe it's reversed. Anyways, they're literally set up in their etymology in the Latin root of matter and mother. So the matter is the mother. And so it's so incredible that our bodies are truly of the mother. Um, so
Of the
yeah,
earth.
of the earth. Yeah. And it's something that I'm just so passionate about. And the red tent is this like beautiful space where I'm kind of taking all the one-on-one work that I've done with women and bringing it into a Facebook group. And then women can join these monthly group ceremonial sessions to learn it at a little bit more affordable.
Yes. So going back to the red tent, so I know where that came from, but if somebody doesn't know what like the red tent is from history, from ancient times, like I love how you're merging it with modern times. Like there's a red tent online. Like that's so amazing. But do you want to speak a little bit to that about like what red tent is?
Yes. So I was so happy that you asked. So the red tent for so many generations, like thousands of years, women and all sorts of tribes all over the world would have a red tent. And so it's interesting that this was also across many different tribes and many different lineages and traditions. And so a red tent was a specific building or tent where women would go during menstruation. And because all of the women lived so tribally, they typically all bled at the same time. And so, and if they didn't, then the women would know, oh, this woman is off. Something is going on. Either she's pregnant or, there's something wrong with her body. She needs these herbs. She needs this food. She needs this medicine. And so women were doing that healing work so naturally and organically and being reflected to by these other women who are like, oh, you're off. I had that same problem. Here's what you do. Um, and so every month the women would come into the red tent and they would bleed together and they would birth babies here. And this is where her story was really passed down. It was the oral tradition of the feminine mysteries. So whether the feminine mysteries are related to pleasure or related to working with the goddess or embodying our own goddess, right? Like I always say the masculine is I am and the feminine is I relate. And so in this red tent is that relation aspect, is that duality of being able to relate with the women. And there are many times that, in these red tents, these women, based on what time frame of history we're in, what culture we're in, if we're under the Judaic law at the time, which talks about the red tent in the Old Testament, some of these women were taken from pagan culture and sold to men or bought by men in Abrahamic tradition. And so the red tent is where they kept alive the goddess and they kept the feminine as part of the mysteries and they passed it down to their daughters who passed it down to their daughters. And there's a beautiful fiction book called The Red Tent that you can read.
It's on my list right now.
It's really fun. I read it when I had COVID one time, blew through it in a couple of days, drinking just drinking juice and reading that book. It was great. It's a quick read and it's so beautiful and it's fictions, but it brings so much of the concepts. And so one of the things that happened, especially, before there was patriarchy, back when it was still matriarchy, the red tent was actually revered by the men and by the elders of the culture. And so they knew that when women are menstruating, their uterus is 10 times expanded. So their portal of creation is 10 times as big, which means that their crown chakra is also 10 times expanded. And so women are in the most psychedelic phase of their cycle during menstruation. And so the women would go into the red tent, they would be bleeding together in deep ceremony, and they would have visions, they would have downloads, they would connect to the cosmos, and then they would bring this wisdom to the men, to the elders, and such as, oh, we should not be planting by the river, it's going to flood this year, like don't put the soil, don't put the crops there, or we need to move because war is coming. And so the women were really the ones who were bringing the wisdom, and then the men were enacting the protection. They were following the guidance. Yeah, the women were bringing the divine guidance and the men were implementing action. So it was this really beautiful relationship between the two of them. And then the red tent shifted and it became a place of women being able to keep the mystery of connection to the goddess and connection to their body alive. And then when colonization began to happen and we really began to kind of enter into a dark age collectively, there was this shift. And the conquistadors, whether it was in Central or South America or the conquerors, knew that if they attacked the red tent first, it would disband the whole village. And so when they would come and bring war and bring conflict, they would attack the red tent first because it was where all the sacred wisdom was held and where the heart truly and the heartbeat of the community was. And it would be much easier to take over a society if they took the red tent out first with the women and the children.
Wow, I am like speechless. I have the goosebumps. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah. And so the power of the red tent virtually is that I've created this virtual space because we no longer bleed all together. We no longer have this, but it's a place to keep the mystery alive. And so it's a place where women can join, and each month I do a free, transmission, and then I do a monthly offering, and women can buy packages and be part of the each monthly offering. I send them yoni steam herbs and womb oil in the mail and cacao, and you get all the things. But we also honor the wisdom of each woman present. And so there's, time and space that's created for women to be connecting. And I really just began this because before I was doing this all in person, and I had this deep desire. I was like, I know so many beautiful women who have so much wisdom outside of just my little network. And I would love to bring everybody into connection. And there's a sacredness about doing this in our home, right? Like our home. And I even invite women to do the calls in their bedroom because that's the root chakra of their house. Typically, if you're menstruating, you lay in bed a lot. So being in that space, doing this deep ceremonial work in your house is shifting the vibration of your whole home. And so that was really my intention on bringing it virtually and allowing the weaving of modernism to bring this to us. And the ceremonial sessions are recorded, so women have access to it after and can keep playing with the energetics, which is really beautiful.
That's amazing. I actually just, when you sent me all of your information, I just requested to join and I'm really excited.
Yeah, I'm so
I'm
happy to
coming
have.
up. I'm coming up on my ovulation phase. So I'm like ready to go. I have all the energy and I'm ready. I'm ready to conquer the month.
I love that. Ovulation is such a fun time. We just like get to produce and do everything. I am in my luteal, so I want to clean the house, I want to nest, I want to prepare, I want to tie up all the loose ends. I want to let go of anything that I haven't been working with. And it's when my like intuition is the most high, or when all women's intuition is the most high, is luteal. So it's really when we get to kind of see through the bullshit that we've been putting up with and be like, I'm not doing that.
I love that. Do you want to speak a little bit about the phases?
Yeah, I would love to. So menstruation is where we begin. And so day one of your menstrual cycle, and if you're not already cycle tracking, please start your first day bleeding. It's day one. And this is when it's connected to the energy of the new moon. So everything is dark in the sky. It's really a time to go inward. Your crown chakra, like mentioned, is the most open. So you're most connected to your dreams, to your intentions. It's a beautiful time to kind of plant intentions for the month ahead. Energetically, we're connected to the crone or the wise woman. So, that cycle of life is like end of life. The veil is the most thin, and we're really in such a deep place of wisdom. The more that you work with conscious menstruation, the further you can expand into these higher states. We leave menstruation and step into pre-ovulation, spring. So we leave winter, the winter of menstruation, which has me in cozy sweaters, although I'm just in one because my husband really likes AC. Uh, but we leave and we step into spring, into pre-ovulation, into the maiden. And so in a woman's life, this is often ages like 0 to 27 to Saturn return. We are in our maiden phase. And that's going to be, we're bright-eyed, we're bushy-tailed, we're willing to try anything, we're experimental. So for those of you who are in feminine entrepreneurship on this call, this is really the time to be like playing and what you can do for your business and what feels playful and just kind of trying different things out, being like, oh, maybe I want to launch something. All right. How would that look? What would it feel like, playing around with the different energies? Or if you're someone who's listening and you're trying to find different healing modalities, this is the time to try out the new class, to go to different things. Energetically, we're still somewhat inward. So I say that this is when our social bandwidth is for people in our inner circle and like plants and nature and animals. It's not the most extroverted time of our cycle. It's a little more like, let's keep it close. And then we move to ovulation, which is like so summer and solar, and we're our most extroverted and productive, and it's associated with the mother archetype. So I'm sure you all have seen mothers in your life who are carrying 2 children, 18 bags, running a bunch of errands, cooking meals, doing all the things. So that mother phase of life, that 30s and 40s type energy we get to experience and play in. And that is really the time to like launch, to go, to do the things. As far as exercise, this is like when you want to hit cardio and strength training and go the hardest on your exercise flow. And yeah, ovulation is just so fun. Naturally, you can get pregnant during this. So most women ovulate just a few days a month. It's one of the shortest phases of your whole menstrual cycle. It's about 3 days. And if you don't already check your cervical fluid, ovulation is the time when you can really start noticing it the most. Menstruation and ovulation, you notice the most with fluid.
Yep.
So if you are in like your ovulation window and you aren't noticing a lot of cervical fluid, and it's not thick, I would definitely say start to notice that and take note. Some women can even feel their egg drop during ovulation. And so the deeper we step into this, sometimes I'm like, oh, there it goes. Like, felt that.
Yep.
I'm so creative. I am birthing. Ready for it all. And then premenstrual or luteal phase is one of the longer phases of our cycle. And so that's PMS. And so this is when women get a bad rap for being bitchy or moody or whatever the thing is. And like I mentioned, this is when our third eye is the most open. And this is when our ability to see clearly. And so I kind of say like, especially in pre-ovulation or in that maiden phase, we're kind of walking around in these rose-colored glasses and everything is beautiful and perfect. And ovulation, we're really too busy to even take the rose-colored glasses off. We're just going and moving and flowing. And then we come to luteal or PMS and we like take off the rose-colored glasses and we're like, oh shit, I've been putting up with a lot of bullshit or I've been doing more than I need to. And so this is such a powerful time to step in with boundaries. This is our wild woman phase. This is when we're ready to like burn shit to the ground. If you notice women in their 50s and 60s, they often really, a lot of them have gone through, whether it's a big career change, sometimes a divorce, sometimes they just completely change their life in different ways. And it really is that wild woman energy of like, I'm just going to burn down anything that's not aligned to my authentic self and step fully into me. We're biologically repelled by testosterone during this time. So I do invite you, like, it's like a biological thing. Mostly, especially like if you have partners or live with, especially if you have like a partner, you might notice you're more annoyed with your partner. It's because the body's like, wait, I didn't get pregnant, must find new man. So it's like some like literal primitive, we're annoyed. But it can also be a powerful time to like really notice and to like spend time with women and really spend time with yourself. I find it's a time for nesting, right? Like we're preparing for menstruation. I say like clean your bedroom, clean your house, meal prep, especially if you have hard periods, like make those warm, grounding, nourishing meals that are going to support you during your menstrual cycle so that when your bleed comes, it's like, check, check, check. I've done it all. I can go deep into my womb cave. It's wrapping up all those loose ends and pulling it all together. So yeah, those are the cycles.
I love that. I've the last since, well, it's more than the last couple of years now. So I was on birth control for probably about 13 years. I've been off it for probably close to 10. And since then, I really stepped into working with my cycle and knowing exactly when those phases are. And it's funny because the longer you track your cycles, like you said, the more you can start to feel that egg drop. Like I know exactly when I'm ovulating now. And I know exactly when my period is coming. Like, it's so funny. I made my friends laugh last month because I was like, okay, we got to get through the weekend. Like, I'm not getting my period until Sunday night. And they were like, you can't just pick when your period comes. And I was like, no, no, no. But like, you actually can. Like, when you tap into the phases and your energy, like, you really can be like, okay, body, now it's safe for you to bleed. And Sunday at 4:30 p.m., I got my period.
Yeah, it absolutely happens. I mean, I've totally been there myself, and occasionally I've been like, whoa, was not expecting that.
Yeah.
The little bit of humbling, but most of the time it's like every single month I'm like, yep, I'm looking at my calendar. I'm not going to plan anything that day because I want to
Yeah.
bleed that day. So, and the level of rest that I've needed during menstruation has changed too. When I had horrible periods, like day one, day two, I'm completely alone and isolated. And now it's like 5 hours of rest. My body's good. She's ready to do very slow, gentle things, but
Yeah.
do a little bit.
Yeah.
And so it's fun to work with. And the more that we regulate and tune in, I'm so happy that you have that relationship with your body, and I'm
Y-
celebrating you for it. I celebrate all the women who are on this path because it's
Same.
honestly our birthright to be here.
Yes, absolutely. And it's been so long that we've been told to like push it down, suck it up, like take this pill. I mean, Midol, like you said, ibuprofen. I know people who are literally given naproxol or naproxen. It's basically just like really strong ibuprofen because it's like, oh, we don't know what's wrong with you. You have these painful periods. Like, here's this really strong painkiller. None of this is normal. Like, none of it it's
Not-
normal. And when you start to like weed it out and like you said, kind of listen to the call that your body is calling for, like you will find the answers. And little by little, I have kind of healed that relationship because when you're on birth control, you're numb. That's a numbing agent. Like you're shutting your body's natural hormones off. You are, kind of at the mercy, your cycle is at the mercy of this pill that you're taking every month. And if you're taking it for so long, like you really do become disconnected with your body. And when I first came off birth control, I was so disconnected. In a year and a half, I only bled 3 times coming off
wow.
birth control. And even then, doctors were like, oh, that's normal. And I'm like, what could be normal about this? And then I finally met one doctor that was like, oh, no, you've shut your body's hormones off for so long that now your body is literally relearning how to have these hormones on their own without external influence. And that was a huge game changer for me. And then it was even a couple more years where I was still working through healing that relationship. And another one of the big things that I stopped doing was using tampons and
Mm-hmm.
um, using conventional tampons. And I started using period underwear. So just bleeding and letting it come out. And that also was like so powerful because you're not like plugging this thing up and you're not like interfering. And I noticed that the longer that I used the period underwear, the less my symptoms started to lessen even more. So it was like this huge journey. So with all of the things that you talk about on your social medias, like I love that you are starting to talk about this and helping women to reconnect to, like you said, this birthright. Like it's not this disgusting, awful thing that happens to us once a month. Like it's a beautiful part of the creation cycle.
Absolutely. And like I highly recommend period underwear, Hannah, period reusable pads that can like snap into your underwear. Just look for like organic, PFA free, all the things. If you're going to use anything inside, I recommend Cora discs, the silicone discs,
Oh
instead
yeah.
of the cup, because the Diva cups create suction. And so that's sort of the extra pressure, whereas the disc just really lays at the base of your cervix. So it's going to be a lot more comfortable for you.
I've
In my
seen
opinion.
a couple of these come up in my sponsored ads recently, and I'm curious to try because I teach hot power yoga, so it's really hard on the first couple of days of your cycle to be in a class that's like 100 degrees and 86% humidity when you're wearing like a pad or period underwear. Um, so I have leaned on like an organic cotton tampon for a couple of hours while I'm teaching, but I'm curious about the disc and I wonder if it would work for me.
Yeah, try it out. It does. I always say, like, don't try it and then immediately go somewhere because it does take a little practice of learning where it rests in your cervix.
Yeah.
Could maybe leak. But it is so powerful. And then you can also save your menstrual blood with that, which is really nice. I know there's a woman on Instagram that I follow, and she paints with her period blood and different things like that. And so also very inspiring. And even when I first started working with my period blood and like saving it, I think my husband was a little like, what's going on? And now he's just like so normalized to it that he's like, well, are we going to give the blood to the earth in a ritual? Like, are we going outside now? Like, he like sees me with like my like period blood jar that maybe was like I wrung out the water from my underwear or something like that. And I put it in with these flowers and made it look really pretty. And he's like, so we're doing a ritual? He's like, can I join? Do you want it to just be solo?
Oh my gosh, I
Um,
love that so much.
yeah. And like when we are in these, beautiful sacred partnerships, like we do desire men to be supportive of our menstrual cycle, and men who are worthy to be in our field are ones who are going to continue to evolve and to continue to grow and to continue to match that. And they're going to go through their own deaths and rebirths, and their relationship to their inner feminine and to your feminine is going to be reflected. And it's not that they all have to get on board right away. We can give them a little time. But when you are bleeding and they're like, I honor your womb, I honor your wisdom, I honor your intelligence. Um, it's really potent and really powerful, and they benefit a lot from it as well, since our wombs, especially for, if you're a mother, if you're a wife, a lot of times our wombs can become alchemical portals for things like grief and different experiences that our partner and children are going through as well. And so when we're tapped into it, we can be like, oh, this isn't even mine, but I am alchemizing it for the whole unit. It's really powerful.
Yes, it's that sacred, divine, feminine, and masculine energy kind of like weaving and working together in synchronicity and standing powerfully in their own respective energies. And I
A
think
thousand.
that is such like I'm passionate about talking about this, especially in this kind of like sphere that we're currently in culturally. Like I think it's really important to talk about um these roles, these masculine and feminine roles. Like it's not a bad word.
No, it's not. And it's not what we've been raised to think either,
Right.
like divine masculinity can have softness and
Yes.
gentleness and kindness and empathy. And, um, I think about this a lot. Like my husband is a more gentle, energetic being, and he's also very strong, and he chops wood, and he's a provider for the family and all of the things. Um, and also, he does cry and he does have emotions, and he does get to flow into these spaces. And I think so often when men begin to really step into healthy masculinity, and I'm so grateful that there's more men's groups that are popping up and more men's embodiment circles. I know there's one here in Chicago that some men in my field go to. And I have another friend who, is part of a men's circle, and they do this type of work of also holding each other accountable and being like, this is not how we treat women. We are women's protectors. We are women's providers. We do not harm them. We do not cheat on them. We do not, you know, belittle and all of that. Like we are really meant to be their protectors. And it is really sacred when we can lean into that. And every relationship is going to be different. I am obviously speaking here in this call and in this time from a perspective of my lived experience, which is that I am heteronormative and in a cisgender heteronormative marriage, right? And so much of my relationship, we did get lucky in some ways, and we have done this work in many other lives to bring us to this point.
And you also, like, I know from what you speak about online, like you do a lot of ceremony and ritual and work together. Like it's not something that it's like, oh, this just works. It's like, no, 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 it works because you put work into it.
1,000%. One of the things I tell my clients when they ask about my love story, and if I share, the multiple lives and all the magic and the mystery, which I could go into, is I'm like, it doesn't matter how many past lives you've had. It doesn't matter the coolest psychedelic experience or telepathy or the best orgasms or whatever the thing. It's not enough. Like, it really isn't enough for sacred union partnership if you're not both willing to go through individual death and rebirth as well as collective death and rebirth, and the relationship go through death and rebirth, and both be doing and devoted in full devotion to the growth of the partnership by, having hard conversations, creating conscious finances discussions, being willing to sit in the discomfort of, I have new needs, I have new desires, I have new, like, these things are changing in me, and I'm asking you to change to meet me where I'm at. Um, and flowing with that, and like really sovereignty. Like, I really don't believe in compromising in relationships at all. Like, I don't. I'm like,
Hot take. Oh, I love it.
hot
Yeah,
take,
you
believe in compromise.
want to speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, I think compromising is cutting away part of your authenticity to merge to someone else's. It's like both people are self-abandoning or fragmenting to make a thing work. And I'm not talking like we need to find somewhere to go for the night to eat. I'm talking like bigger parts of your personality. It's like, okay, sometimes we're on the go and we do just need to find a restaurant that we will both eat. That's a different type of what I'm talking about. But, compromising what my energy field is, compromise what I'm willing to do, compromise going against my body's wisdom to fit your experience or your life is not healthy. And it's so normalized. And this is why I'm really an advocate for conscious monogamy over, I guess, standard traditional monogamy that we're raised with. Is, when we bring this consciousness to it, to this, I'm choosing this person day by day because I love them. I'm choosing to love them moment by moment. I'm choosing to accept them in their fullness and who they are, not into the fantasy of who I want them to be, but fully who they are in their sovereignty. And I'm fully loving me and my sovereignty, and I'm not willing to do X, Y, Z. And also accepting when they're not willing to do X, Y, Z. And then what are the things that we agree on, right? Because most people, regardless of whether it's a marriage or a relationship, we have way more things in common than not. Even people that I have opposite political views with, which I'm not really very political, but whatever. Even people that are, far left or far right or whatever, at the core of who they are, they have a lot more in common and way more ways to find connection than for disconnection. And the same is true in a marriage. Is I don't need, my husband to be into everything I'm doing. I just need him to respect it and to honor it and to also have his own interests. And he doesn't need to be, for me to be in everything that, involved in everything he's doing. So when we have a sovereign approach and a conscious approach, we step out of the I'm going to self-abandon for you and expect you to self-abandon for me, and instead come into a place of true unconditional love and acceptance for the other person.
Oof, that's like a mic drop moment. That is so powerful. And I love that take because we have been told like relationships are sacrifice and they're and yeah, you're right. It's like abandoning part of yourself and that's not healthy. So I love that perspective.
Absolutely not. And, you know, especially women get told, like, oh, you're meant to sacrifice for your children, you're meant to sacrifice for your husband. And this is not true at all, you know? An abundant mother, a mother that really is fully there, is one who is fully in her body first and from overflow, nourishing everyone. It's just like the story of cacao.
Yeah. That might be a story for another day. We have to have you back.
I would love to come back. Thank you so
This
much for
was
having
amazing.
me.
If anyone wants to connect with you, where can they find you?
They can find me through my website, www.marissalynnhealing.com, my Instagram at Marissa Lynn Healing, and you can always join the Facebook group, which the link will be in this bio for the red tent. I would love to have you. I'll absolutely approve your membership and would love to see you in a ceremonial session.
Yes, I can't wait to be there. Thank you so much for being here. If you liked this episode, please give us a like, a thumbs up, subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear this. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time.